The first story. I live in a pretty rural area. It takes a little over an hour to drive to the nearest town, but I'm not completely isolated. My good friend Rob and his wife, Irina, are a 10-minute walk from my house. And our friend Anton owns a farm that's a 20-minute walk down the road. I was talking with Anton at my house last night when Irina knocked on the door. She looked like she hadn't gotten much sleep in a while. "Is everything all right?" we asked her near simultaneously.
Robbie's not well, I think. He hasn't talked since he fell. I'm really worried about him.
Robbie fell. When?
Let me start again. 2 days ago, Robbie told me he was going hunting with Ivan, so I took a nap on the couch. Ivan, our dog, woke me up by barking at me. I also heard gunshots in the woods. I followed Ivan outside, and he took me to a pit just as Robbie climbed out. He looked out of it. He was very pale, so I nearly had to drag him home. But he wouldn't tell me a thing about what happened. He just stared blankly at me.
And he hasn't talked since?
Anton asked.
No, he hasn't even eaten around me, but half of the fridge was empty this morning, and I doubt it was Ivan.
Let's go see him. Maybe he'll be more talkative with some friends around. So we walked to his house, and he was sitting at the table, exactly as Irina had described, staring blankly ahead, pale as a ghost. "What's the matter, Rob?" "Irina says you haven't been talking much lately," I asked carefully.
Are you giving her the silent treatment to get on her nerves? Apparently you haven't eaten in a while. Now that'd be a first.
Anton laughed and slapped Rob on the back when suddenly Rob leaned forward and started to retch. "Oh, crap. You all right there, Rob?" Rob hacked out a large red bug onto the kitchen table. Then a dozen smaller red bugs crawled out of his mouth and down his face before suddenly he vomited a torrent of writhing red insects across his kitchen. Anton and I started yelling and stomping any bug that got close, whilst Irina stood in horrified silence. A horde of smaller bugs began amassing directly in front of me, but I grabbed the kettle and emptied its contents onto the squirming mass. By now, the vomiting had stopped, and Rob had fallen backwards out of the chair, his eyes rolled back in his head. The smaller bugs scuttled out of the doors and windows, and all of the larger ones had been stomped into a maroon pulp.
What in the hell was that?
Only one way to find out. I responded, "I'm sorry to ask this of you, Irina, but can you lead us to the pit you found Rob climbing out of?" Once we got there, I shone a flashlight in and saw a few animal bones. After a few minutes, a sickly-looking rabbit with patches of fur missing hopped towards the pit. As soon as it fell in, more of those red bugs swarmed out of its mouth and deeper into the cave. Irina flinched at the sight of this. "Irina, go home and call someone to tell them that Rob is dead. Anton and I will deal with this." Anton and I went to his house and gathered what we needed. Gasoline, and a lot of it. Once we returned, we drenched the bottom of the pit with it and threw a match in. It lit up immediately, and it was hugely cathartic to see those bugs go up in flames after what happened to poor Rob. Anton managed to craft some kind of improvised explosive and sealed off the pit afterwards. We drove to town after that. Anton is trying to explain that Rob died in some sort of hunting accident while I dropped Irina at her sister's house in town. The poor woman, having to that happen to her husband. She must be traumatized because she hasn't spoken since last night. The second story. I usually do a final scan of the house before I leave. I got a couple of things out the drawer before I made my way down the hallway to check on the girls. Stephanie was fast asleep under her pink covers. I could see her name above her bed glisten in the nightlight. Then I went to the baby's room to make sure she was still asleep as well. She looked so cute, snuggled up with her stuffed animals. As I made my way downstairs to the living room, I could feel that something was slightly off. I just tried to brush it off and continue with what I was doing. As soon as I went to grab the car keys out of the living room, something hit me in the head really hard. I think I might have passed out because when I opened my eyes, I was in a dimly lit room that I can only describe as a basement. I tried to reach my hand, and that's when I realized that my hands were tied behind my back. My feet were tied up as well. I could feel that my phone was no longer in my back pocket, even though I probably couldn't do much with it anyway in my current state. If it wasn't for the record option on my watch, I wouldn't even be able to keep a record of what's happening to me. Too bad the signal isn't strong enough to call someone. I started to yell for help, but right before I shouted, I decided against it. I didn't want to make the situation worse. I don't know what awaited me. I scanned the room, trying to see if I could find anything that could help me, but it was really hard to see anything. I don't even know how long I've been down here. Honestly, I'm terrified. I've never been in a situation like this before. I can hear footsteps above me and the faint sound of a voice. A woman's voice, I believe. It sounds like she's dragging something across the floor. Suddenly, I hear the door open and a faint light quickly enter the room. I hear the pitter-pat of little feet skipping down the stairs. A pair of pink pajamas sat down in front of me on the floor. "Stephanie," I called out. "What is happening? How did I get down here?" She just giggled and whispered.
You're going to die tonight.
Immediately, it was hard to breathe, hard to speak. I wanted to ask her what she meant by that, but before I could muster up the courage to speak, I heard the footsteps and the dragging noise again. They were getting closer and closer, until finally I heard the door slowly open again. Only this time, there was a much larger silhouette in the doorway. They walked down there, stairs, letting whatever that they were dragging hit every stair. I could feel my heartbeat in my chest. I look up to see a woman standing behind Stephanie holding a bat. She lit a cigarette and signaled for Stephanie to go back upstairs. She looked at me and smiled. Then she said, "We're going to play a game." That's when I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had decided to rob the wrong house.